Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Today, alhamdulillah, this will be the first lecture given for the non-profit, which is known as Ibn Taymiyyah Learning Center. And that's what we have next door, the Free Public Library. We do have a non-profit, inshallah ta'ala, and this lecture was given on behalf of the non-profit. So today we have here the introduction to our title, our lecture, which is known as Cultivating Our Children by the Qur'an and Sunnah. And inshallah ta'ala, we're going to have some guest speakers that's going to be coming from the tulab, from the students, inshallah ta'ala. The guest speakers, which will be Muhammad Musa, who is currently now is the Imam of Furqan. He also graduated from Dar Hadith in Mecca, and he also one of the students of Sheikh Muhammad ibn Ethiopia, Sheikh Muhammad ibn Adam al-Ethiopi, hafidhahullah ta'ala. He would come down, inshallah ta'ala, he would do the first speak after the introduction. And then we have our brothers that you already know, Ali Davis, as well as Abu Sajid, Saeed Abu Sajid, who are former students from Qura. And we have our beloved brother, Naeem Abu Abdullah, who is a student in Damaj, as well as in Sana'a, who studied for multiple scholars. We have as an interview up, inshallah. Today in the introduction, before getting started, we want to mention that the non-profit is, as we said, the goal of the non-profit here, especially in the Kensington section, it is fostering the intellectual and spiritual growth of the people through education, resources, and support. Our goal and our objective is to support and facilitate a center for literacy, to improve and advance professional development of individuals, to provide community resources, stimulating the betterment of the local community, encouraging a close relationship between individuals and their respective community. So one of the programs that we'll be doing here at the nonprofit, which you will see, is called the Father and Son Initiative, who our beloved speaker here, who is the Vice President of the board, he will explain to you what that is soon, inshallah ta'ala. Also, we have a membership slip, as well as for those who want to participate as being members to the nonprofit, you can sign up, leave your name, your number, your email address, and we'll send you regular, things that's going on with the program, as well as there's slips here for the Father and Son Reconnective Initiative, which he's going to explain, inshallah. Walaikum salam wa rahmatullah. We just want to start off, before the brothers start, reminding us with the characteristics of some of the Sifat Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, some of the characteristics of the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, and how he dealt with his respective community. And this was stated on the tongue of his wife, our mother, Khadija bint Khuwaylid, radiallahu ta'ala anha. She mentioned about the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam when he returned back from the cave, and he was in fright, he was in terror. And he said, cover me. And he thought that Allah Jalla wa Ala had, disgraced him or something like that. He thought he seen something bad. So she said, Kalla. He said, nay, never will Allah Jalla wa Ala, Allah will never disgrace you. Allah will never humiliate you, never disgrace you. And then she based all of that on the fact, she said, you keep good relations with your kith and your kin, and you help the poor. Now I want you to pay attention. There were no Muslims before who? The Prophet ﷺ received his revelation, correct? So this character that he was displaying was amongst who? Non-believers, right? So he was acting in the society amongst non-believers. And he still was good and kind towards the non-believers. We got that point, right? She said, you help the poor and the destitute. You serve your guests generously and assist the deserving ones who are afflicted with calamities. So Shaykh Uthaymeen, rahmatullah ta'ala alayhi, he said, Allahu Akbar. He said, Allahu Akbar. The intelligence of this woman is amazing. She used the favor of Allah which he conferred upon him as the proof that he would never disgrace him. And this is derived from the statement of Allah Azza wa Jal, فَأَمَّا مَنْ أَعْطَى وَاتَّقَى. As for he who gives in charity and keeps his duty to Allah and fears him, وَصَدَّقَ بِالْحُسْنَى, and he believes in al-husna, Allah said, فَسَيُّنَسِّرُهُ لِلْيُسْرَى, and we will make smooth for him the path of ease. So when you see a man that Allah Jalla wa Ala has favored with these characteristics, like the Prophet ﷺ, they know he is from the pious and the path of ease has been made smooth for him. So long as the affairs remain upon goodness, the things will be made smooth for him. This is the immediate glad tidings for the believer, We ask Allah to make us and you from His people. Ameen. This was the statement of Sheikh Uthaymeen, comment on this particular statement of particular statement of Khadija, radiallahu ta'ala anha. Reason why we brought this in the beginning, because this program that we're trying to start is not just going to be specifically for Muslims. All right? This program is going to be for Muslims and non-Muslims. Also, outreaching into the community that you're in is from the character and the spirit of Islam. Sometimes a lot of us think that character doesn't play a part. Character is just as important as minhaj. It's a part of minhaj. And having good character, as the Prophet said, إِنَّمَا بُعِثْتُ لِأُتِمَّ أَخْلَاقٍ. Indeed, I've only been sent to perfect good character. Alright, so good character is very important, even with those who are believers and non-believers. Inshallah, now my brother Belgrade, inshallah, can go into what the actual program is going to consist of.
Assalamu alaikum. First, what I'm going to do, I'm going to go into a little bit about the program that we're having and what some of the reasons are. And one of the things that we know that are one of the building blocks of any community is the connection between parents and their children, but more importantly, between fathers and their sons. And if we notice in our community where we're at, whether it's down here or the rest of our city, one of the major issues and problems we have in our community is that the fathers and the sons do not have a connection. And we know that in any society, when there's no connection between fathers and sons, the community is on its way down, or if not already down. And we could look at it, some of us that might be my age, I'm not afraid to say my age, 43, and we know from when we were younger, I remember being in class when I was a kid, the majority of our fathers were there. Even if they weren't doing the best, they were still there. He could be reached, you know? As opposed to now, if you look in the classrooms, you see almost the exact opposite. The majority of our young men are being raised by their mothers who try their hardest. At the end of the day, you might have 5 children, you're trying to raise them on the streets like these are kind of hard. So, and I say this as well because being part of the community, I work at the school around the corner, behind me. Some of the kids may go to that school. I work at the school around the corner. I'm a therapist at the school around the corner. And these are some of the problems that we're seeing, where there's not a connection with a lot of the children with their fathers. We have a kid, he's in school, he's acting up, he's throwing chairs, all right? You sit down, you talk to the kid, hey, young man, tell me about your parents. He starts talking about his father, he starts crying. I haven't seen my father in 5 years. My father's serving 3 murder cases. They know those cases. My father's not coming home to 2050, you know. So this traumatizes our children and it traumatizes our sons, because then there's no one there that are going to raise our boys. So one of the things that we've been talking here at Maktab Tami is that we were trying to figure out what is the best way to have a connection between the fathers in the community and their sons, because there's no way that we're going to be able to go in the community and try to raise good Muslims without addressing some of the social ills that are here. You can't ignore the social ills that are in our community, that are plaguing us, some of us. All right. I'll tell you a little bit about myself before we go into the program. I've worked in this field over 20 years. Have a master's in psychology, so I've done therapy, psychotherapy, and everything, as well as I've also had experience teaching in Saudi Arabia, in the United Arab Emirates, traveled around the world, and it's a bit heartbreaking to come back home and to see that some of these problems are actually getting worse in our communities. Even with the technology and everything, and supposedly we're doing better, but we see that these problems are becoming a big issue now. So basically, I'm going to explain to our program what it is. It is what we said before. It's a father and son reconnection initiative. Now, this doesn't necessarily mean that it's, when I put the program together, I didn't want to make it to seem like it's going to be a bashing program. Where the sons are going to come in bashing their father, where were you? The kid's going to come in saying, you disrespectful, back in the day, we used to do this. We heard all that. We also don't want to have it where it's a bashing program where they're bashing their mom. she can't, my baby mom won't let me see the kid, things like that. We're not going into this. We're reaching out to the fathers and the sons to come together so we could have them establish some sort of connection. Some of us live with our sons. Some of us don't live with our sons. Some of us haven't seen our sons for years. Some of us have been gone, whether it was prison or whether the mothers kept our boys away from us. So what we're trying to do here is that we're trying to establish this connection here between us and our sons, for the most, all right? But also, what we want to do is that we want to try to see, after our sessions, how can we strengthen these connections? And then eventually what we want to do, we want to bring this to other people, invite other people in and see what we're doing here. Maybe there's some problems or some issues or techniques that we can learn here that maybe we just didn't learn. Because a lot of us, honestly, we were raised by single mothers that tried their hardest. But at the end of the day, it's hard for single mom to raise a lot of us. We know how it is. Our mom tries to give us the best we can, the nicest Jordans and everything. Then when we get old and mom can't keep up, we turn to the streets. And there's no one there. Our uncles aren't there. Our fathers aren't there. And sometimes our fathers or uncles that are there, sometimes they're on the streets themselves. And some of us have learned that we've come back and now we say, look, we don't want this for our kids. We don't want this for our kids. Right? And I don't think anybody wants this, for their kids. Even the people on the streets don't want it for their kids. So what this program is going to be, it's going to be a multi-step program with the intention of reconnecting fathers with their sons. Like I said, it doesn't matter, it's not like where it's going to be a bashing program. We're just trying to figure out ways that we can have ideas, that we can talk, and we can get together and figure out what are some of the problems. Here's some ideas of what can we do to strengthen that connection. All right? One of the things that our program includes individual intake and assessment by me and my team. So we're going to have therapists, qualified therapists that are doing this. Like I said, I do this for a living. So what we're trying to do is that we're trying to, before we even get into the class, we need to get some information on you and your son. What's going on here? So we're going to have two stages of intake. Sorry, excuse me. 2 stages of intake. One stage is going to be with the father. The next stage is going to be with the son or sons, and then we're going to have one together. All right, and we're going to actually go through and try, and we're going to do a lot of brainstorming and try to figure out, okay, hey, what's the issues? What are some of the issues we could do to make our problems, to make our issues better? But as well, what we're going to do as well, this is what we call, in therapy, we call this a strengths-based program, which means that we're not just going to focus on the negative, because there might be a connection with your sons that you just might not, you might not have tapped into yet. So like a lot of us, if we have sons, we might want to push our sons to play basketball, for example. But just at the end of the day, he might not have no height, and he doesn't have a jump shot. Maybe there's another sport he's good at, but maybe with us just being, we have to look at other avenues. Maybe he's actually good at writing. Maybe he's good at that. So one thing that we're going to do, we have to figure out what are the talents of our children and how can we improve that. Because if we're not paying attention to our sons, they might have a talent that we might not never know. You might not know. Your son might be a good writer. He might be a good businessman. How are we going to tap into that? He's on the corner, he's doing his thing, he has no pen, no pad. That's some mathematical skills right there. So what we want to do is we want to give options. Like, okay, well, maybe we need to try this. Maybe we need to try that. Maybe the methods that we're so used to doing from before, maybe they're not working. We need to look at other options. So one thing that we're not going to do, we're not going to come in this program and be judgmental. We're not going to come in and tell you how to run your house. We want to give you some suggestions on how you can better yourselves and how our boys can better themselves and how we can make that connection better with them. All right? So another thing we're going to do, we're also going to have a group focus. After we do the interventions, we're going to have the fathers and the sons come together as a group. And we're going to share some ideas, because there's a bit of a generation gap between our children and us. Of course, we're older than them, so there's a generation gap. So what my son might be going through now, is not what I went through, we went through when we were younger. There's more avenues for distractions. When we were younger, with some of us, all we had was the phone. Now there's phone, there's social media, there's all sorts of things. There's more ways that your children can benefit, but there's also more ways that your children can get in trouble. 9 times out of 10, most of our sons are sitting there on the computer, on their phone, on their tablet all day. And some of us are saying, okay, well, at least he's out of trouble. But at the end of the day, we don't know who he's talking to at the end of that. Is he talking to a kid that's really an adult who's trying to take advantage of our kid? These are real situations. And if we're not paying attention to this and see what's going on, our children could get harmed. So this is an example of some things. So with the group therapy, and as well, our kids need to understand where we're coming from. Because sometimes our children just think that we were never teenagers. We were never boys. We don't know anything. Matter of fact, we were just born adults. They think that. My son over there thinks, what do you know? What do I know? Nothing. We were just born like this. All right? So the connection with them, and not saying that you necessarily want to be best friends, but at least our sons know where we're coming from, and we know where they're coming from. All right? And even from us, how is it, a lot of us, when we came up, a lot of us may have been Muslim or maybe non-Muslim. All right? Now, think of our sons growing up being Muslim in an environment that's totally against them. That's a whole different skill set. When we came up, we did what we want, but now we're trying to raise our kids on some sunnah and with some sense. But yet, maybe the problem is that they're in a school with 30 non-Muslims that are making fun of them. So how do you deal with that? Son, fear Allah. He said, yeah, Dad, but I got to go to school 8 hours a day with these kids. From kindergarten all the way through high school. And then we see a lot of us that have teenage sons that are in their teens and their early 20s. We're having the same problems because we haven't established this and we haven't addressed these issues earlier on. All right? Another thing that we said that we're going to put, we're also going to have some guidelines for maintaining strong connections between the men in our community and the boys. So like I said, the responsibility is going to be with us. And we can only do what we can do within our boundaries. So some of us, like I said, some of us don't have custody of our children, but at least, what little time we have with them, we have to make it last. Some of us have weekends. Some of us have Friday after 5 and bring it back 1 o'clock on Sunday. All right? So we want to make sure that during those times that maybe some suggestions, what can we do during those times instead of playing PlayStation all day, going to a baseball game, and then it's the same thing. We want the children, when they go home, that they learn something. Hey, I connected with my father. I want to go back. He understands where I'm coming from. He understands some of the problems, and he wants to be in my life. Because whether you're a suburban kid or a cold-blooded gangster, everybody wants to be loved, and everybody wants a connection with somebody, with their father. We know, and that's why a lot of us, at one stage of our life, might have been wilding out because maybe our fathers weren't there. Or maybe we didn't have that connection with them. And we see that when that's in place, not saying that all the problems disappear, but we see that, at least they're a bit more manageable. All right? Also, one thing we're going to do, we're going to have continuous support and a follow-up after the completion of the program. Right now, there's probably going to be 2 stages we're going to do it. We're going to have some programs that are going to be day-long, and we're going to have some programs which are going to be 3-day programs. So a day-long program, we're looking at between maybe 6 and 8 hours. This is after the assessment, and there's going to be a certificate of completion. And then we're also going to have another option where it might be between 2 and 3 days. We're just breaking it down. We have 2 options, depending on the turnout and how many people are going to be involved. And we'll have a bit more information with that after the sign up, after we see the sign up sheets and who's available. Another thing that we're gonna have, like we mentioned, is continuous support and follow up after completion of the program. Because what we want to do, we really want to make this one of the good things about therapy is that we want to be able to come back and check how the status is, how is it working. So we want to have continuous connection, and we want to have continuous support. Not that I took a class, here's a certificate, get out of here. Like how sometimes They make you take an anger management course or something. You take the course, see you later, never see the guy again. Right? You just get a certificate to put on your wall. No, we want to be there for additional support, and especially for like I said, we're going to be dealing with Muslims and non-Muslim program, but especially for the Muslim men, of course, one of the pillars of the community is the masjid. So we hope to see more men come in here with their sons. So even if you only see your son twice a week, but those 2 days out the weekend, 4 or 5 salawat are in the masjid. It's a ni'mah. It's a ni'mah. That's time. That can be the time when you sit in your building with them. So the whole thing is, what we try to do is that we're just trying to look at different ways of connecting with our boys, so we're not losing them to the streets. All right. Now, if you look in the community, especially this community out here, we see that we have a lot of problems out here, a lot of issues that we have a lot of issues out here. Whether it's drugs in the community, whether it's fornication, everything. We have a lot of distractions here. But we want to make it to the point that when they come to this center and when they come to learn, when they come here, it's almost like a safe haven. And that shit should be that, And it's always going to be easier for these boys to navigate, around this dunya if their fathers are involved. And there is a connection between the fathers and the sons. And this has to be implemented, because we see many of our brothers, and sometimes even us, where, alhamdulillah, we've discovered Islam and we're trying to do the best we can, but we're totally oblivious to what our kids are doing. We don't know what they're doing. Like I said, remember when we first came around, the biggest problem was the TV. The TV is nothing now. Everything, these kids can get the whole world on their phone. And then we wonder why our kids are acting up, because they have unrestricted access to everything on that phone. And of course, you give them the phone, they're playing it, they can be on 4, 5, 6, 7 hours. Mom's only give them the phone because that's the only way they're going to shut up. So this is all this time of unrestricted stuff, and we don't know what's coming into them. So these are things we're going to also go into as well. How to monitor what our kids are doing, and also how to use some of these tools where there's some benefit. Okay, so with hardship, there's also benefit along with it. We're just going to look at different options here. All right. I'm going to be involved in it as well. My boys will be here, so it's going to be a learning process for all of us. It's not just going to be I'm just sitting up there telling you guys, hey, you should try this, you should try that, because wallahi, it's a difficult situation, dealing with these boys in general. All right, it's difficult, and it's always easier if we have some support, because there's not a lot of us. It's just not a lot of us. So it's difficult, and it's going to be for us to do it, because I mentioned this even to some of my kids. Sometimes we have the mothers do what they can, but at the end of the day, when it really gets rough, what happens? You need to go stay with your father. So after about 15 years of him running wild, he's a man in his life. So she says this kid who's about 250 pounds, he got about 100 tattoos in his face all over, and now you're like, hey son, how you doing? And you got to do all that reprogramming from the beginning, and we see it, and we see it. And this is the job as men. So we understand as well, some of us are just getting reconnected with our sons. So we really don't know them. And that's important as well. So you may come in and trying to do a certain way with him, and he's like, whoa, I don't even know you. Or it might even be a stepson who you raise like a son. Alhamdulillah, a lot of us have raised boys and aren't our sons, but they're in our household. They're eating our food, they're like our sons. How do we go about them? I've been away for a while. Maybe there's some habits that he's picked up that it's going to take, some wise decisions to try to steer him way out of it. Sometimes you got to be harsh. Sometimes you got to be easy, knowing when to be easy and when not to be harsh. So the whole thing is that we don't want to be in this situation where we're pushing them to the streets. Because if we're too hard on them and we're coming across on them in a way where they will say, listen, my father just doesn't understand what I'm going through. And then he just goes to the streets. Because some of us act like we never got in any trouble. So our kids get in something, we're like, I don't understand. We see fathers all the time. They come to the school. Man, I don't know what's wrong with my son. Looking at him, like, I grew up with you. What you mean you don't know what's wrong with your son? I mean, we got to be realistic. They're doing things, and some of what makes it difficult is that some of the behaviors that we're doing is even harder for us as Muslims, because some of the behaviors that they're doing, they're age appropriate and accepted behaviors in this society. They're age appropriate and accepted behaviors in this society. So it's going to be a bit tricky trying to get him to understand that's wrong when he's saying all the 30 kids in this classroom are doing these things. And you're telling them, we don't do this. He's like, Dad, what do you mean we? It's only me and you in the whole neighborhood. And you telling us we don't do this. You know? So we have to figure out, well, how can we get around it? How can we have some programs in place that maybe when these things are going on, our kids aren't around them? You know, that's important as well. You know? We're also going to have, I mentioned we're going to have some resources, because there are a lot of free resources in this area for our sons, whether it's sports, whether it's literacy programs, whether it's math clubs. These are things that we have to start getting our kids into. Because honestly, and I tell people this all the time, if you leave it to the schools to do these for your kids, it's just not going to happen. It's not going to happen. And you don't got to be a rocket scientist to figure it out either. You know? One thing, if you look at the majority of schools, maybe some of your kids go to Willard around the corner around. You notice teachers. Are these teachers from our community? Maybe some. But it's funny, if you walk into my school's parking lot right there, all the teachers' license plates say Jersey. Even if they're from here, they all live in Jersey. So that means that their kids aren't coming to school here. You know, their kids aren't coming to school here. So when you have these teachers in the schools where their kids aren't necessarily coming to school here, that's telling you that they might not be putting their all into helping your kids. One or two might, but in general they're not. Now in the suburbs, those kids, they go to the schools with their parents. Their parents are teachers. He's second grade to state. It's a different vibe. All right. So they come to get the check. They're back over that bridge. All right. So if you're not doing some extra things that these kids are doing, by the time your kid gets to 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th grade, he's going to be so behind, he's not going to be able to catch up. He's not going to be able to catch up. So I always say, if you guys read with your kids, and it don't take a college grad to read with your kids. You know? I mean, like, I'll give an example. My father used to read Dr. Seuss to me every night. Anybody can read Dr. Seuss every night. Make sure you read. If you didn't read, you know, I used to get it. But I understand now what's the purpose. He said, son, if you don't read, you're not going to be anything. All right? Are we looking at these little things? Are we looking at our kids? What are they doing for homework? You know, a lot of us, we like to see the stickers. My baby's on honor roll. Honor roll on what? You know, we just want that sticker on our car. My baby's on honor roll. But then, by the time your kid gets to 4th and 5th grade, look at what they're reading. Just look at the reading list of what your children are on. Your kid goes to school here in 4th grade, 5th grade, 6th grade. 6th grade, what's he reading in 6th grade? Because those kids in Lower Marion in 6th grade, they're reading 700-page books, and they're writing term papers in 6th grade. And now we're trying to get our boys to keep up with them. So they're in 6th, 7th grade, and they're reading on a 3rd grade. What happens if they keep going? Then to high school. By the time they get to high school, they're so frustrated, you're just in the streets because you can't keep up. There was a study between Overbrook and Lower Marion. How far is Overbrook and Lower Marion high from each other? What, a mile maybe? You could walk there if you wanted to. You could walk there. Now imagine if your kid is at 11th grade in Lower Marion and 11th grade in Overbrook, for example. I'm not saying nothing about Overbrook. I don't know who went to Overbrook. I'm just saying. But in general, they're preparing them for a little bit more. But it doesn't have to be like that. It could just be as simple as saying, what are these kids reading? Or what are these problems these kids are doing? And let me get these kids on that. Sometimes it can be just that simple. All right. So these are just some ideas that we could do, because if we're in touch, at least know what's going on with these kids, what's going on with their education, then we won't be so surprised that when it comes time for them to go to college, when it comes time to take SATs, we're sitting there like, what happened to my son? You know, what happened to him? All the time. Had a child to get over. We had a child the other day. His mother spent his whole life with this kid trying to be the top football player. You know, top football player. The kid got to 12th grade. He was a good player, but he couldn't get high enough SAT scores to get into college. Mom said, well, he's the best linebacker in the state of Maryland. Yeah, but he can't even read a playbook. And then what happens if he doesn't make it to the NFL? Because believe it or not, I mean, how many of us thought we were going to the NFL and NBA? I mean, I did. I'm not there. Right, so now what's the backup plan? What's the fallback? You know, because what do the majority of us strive for in the hood? Basketball player, football player, whatever else, unfortunately, a rapper or something, you know? And then when you really look at it, what happens? How many of us actually make it? None. So one of the things that we are going to do, going back to the resource list, is that we're going to provide other options. What can we do for our problem? My kid doesn't like reading. What can I do to get my kid to read? All right? What books can I do to get my kid to another level? Here. What do we do? I'll give you an example here, real quick. I've got this book here for $1 at Dollar Tree. It's called A Little Book of Business Ideas. This book has about 50 people, 50 of the most important business people from the past 50 years. Now, I used to give my kids books, say, if you read this book, you'll be the smartest kid in your class. Now, if you look at them, you'll see what's the first thing all these people, not saying that we follow everything they do, but at least we know. A book like this is $1. When if you go to Dollar Tree, see all the books on the shelf. Dollar books. Right? We don't read. And we don't push our kids to read. But they got those tablets. They got those Jordans. They don't have a book in their hand. They don't have a pen in the bag. How do you go to school without a book bag on your back? So these are things as fathers that we, that we have to understand. How the kid comes to school, son, where's your book bag? I don't have a bag. What do you mean you don't have a bag? I left my bag at home. Where's your homework? Where's your homework? I don't have homework. And all of us have some shortcomings and some ideas that we could share with each other that can help each other out. So this is going to be more so of a support thing as well. And then as well, it's all going to be built around the masjid and of course the Learning Center here. And we have other programs that are coming, but this is really our pilot program. I'm proud of it. And the one thing that I would like the people that are interested in is just, if you sign on the sign-up sheet, maybe your name and your phone number, where you can get in contact with you. Because what we're going to do is I'm going to have specific times that I'm going to be doing assessments for the assessments for the fathers and the son. And it's not too long, maybe 15-20 minutes. Ask some simple questions, family information. So we'll do it with the father, we'll ask the son first, and then we'll get together and do it together and then figure out what steps you can go. And one thing, there has to be participation in this course, right? And I'm not, I don't want to make it sound like school, but we're not going to be able to really be productive if the people that apply or people that join aren't going to show up. And then it's also going to be, we're also going to have our sons looking at us. So if our sons are seeing we don't care, what makes you think they're going to care? All right. Any other questions? You could talk to Nafi. So I'll be here after the class, and we can discuss it a bit more. And like I said, it's a real good program. I hope everybody could show up. And whoever's not here, please tell some of the other your friends or the other brothers. And we're really hoping that this is going to be a program that can start us off in the right direction. Because if we're able to cure some of our social ills, then we'll be able to move forward and do some other things.
Alhamdulillah, we thank the brother Belgrade for coming through, and inshallah ta'ala with this type of program. There's one thing in the program that the brother didn't touch on that I hope that he did. It's not just from the academic point of view that we want our kids to, but it's that binding. And it's nothing like having the father structure in the life of a child. So there are a lot of children out there who don't have a connection at all with the father. And there are a lot of children who have pent up resentment, just like fathers that may have built up resentment. So one of the things we want to do inside this program is we want to do an open dialogue where we have the child address the father without the father having any say so. And he's listening, he hears the father out. Hears the child. The father listens, hears the child out. And vice versa, we have the father do the same thing. This is actually for older kids rather than with a son. So we tell you to bring your son and participate because there are some things that you might not know about your child that your child have not confided into you or dealt with you. So these are some of the things we want to do. We want to bring that strong binding and reconnection, inshallah ta'ala, hopefully. And last but not least, as the brother said, you can get the membership. You can fill up for the Father and Son Reconnection Initiative Program. I think it's going to be 2 days of a week, correct?
Yeah, we're going to do. Excuse me. Yeah, we're looking at about 2 days. 2 days a week. We really want to see who signs up, and we have to really check the schedule because I wanted to have a schedule etched in stone. But at the end of the day, depends. If we get
so he's basically saying that he's going to go off of the sign-up sheet. But however, we have the sign-up sheet that's going to be placed over here in the center. You can come to the Free Public Library, Islamic Library, and you can fill it out. You can fill it out here before you leave. Leave your contact information, your email information. Bring your kids. If people of the community bring out their children, even though we're not saying just because you come to this program you have problems with your family, that don't mean that. You can come and participate and do some things that be binding or building and stuff like that. By the permission of Allah Jalla wa Ala. Also, we're going to have some more programs coming down the line, down the pipe. But this is one of the, as the brother said, one of the programs that we have here that will be offered at service, inshallah. Before the next speaker come on, we get ready to stop. I just want to mention something. All of this is going to be cured, and all of this is going to have to start with ilm, knowledge. Okay? All of this has to start with knowledge. So we're just going to bring some little bit of speech on the virtue of knowledge. You can find this in Kitab, in the book of Sahih Bukhari, in his book known as Kitab al-Ilm. He brings the virtue, he said the virtue of knowledge, and he brings the statement of Allah Azza wa Jal, where he says, يَعْرَفَ اللَّهُ الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا مِنْكُمْ وَالَّذِينَ أُوتُوا الْعِلْمَ دَرَجَاتٍ وَاللَّهُ بِمَا تَعْمَلُونَ خَبِيرٌ. So he brings the verse that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, Allah have raised in degrees those of you from amongst you that he have given knowledge. He raised in degrees those from amongst you, and as those who have endowed with knowledge, وَالَّذِينَ أُوتُوا الْعِلْمَ. He raised them into degrees. وَاللَّهُ بِمَا تَعْمَلُونَ خَبِيرٌ. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is all aware of that which you do. He brings another statement of Allah Azza wa Jal in Surah Taha, where he says, رَبِّ زِدْنِي عِلْمًا. My Lord, increase me in knowledge. Shaykh Uthaymeen rahmatullah ta'ala alayh, he says, comment on the chapter, the Bab Fadlul Ilm. Shaykh Uthaymeen said, Al-ilmu ladhi fihi fadlu wa fihi husn huwa ilmu bi shari'atullah. He says, so the knowledge that we're talking about, that is praiseworthy, that is noteworthy, that is commended, and that is virtuous, and that contains in it all good, then that is the knowledge of the legislation of Allah. That is the knowledge of the legislation of Allah, the Sharia. We're not saying that knowledge outside secular knowledge is not noteworthy, but that's not the knowledge that Allah praises in His book, nor is that the knowledge that the Prophet ﷺ praises in His Sunnah, nor is it the knowledge that the Imam mentioned in their books and talks about knowledge. The knowledge that we're talking about is the knowledge of the Sharia. The Shaykh said, وَلَيْسَ إِلْمٌ لِمَا يَعُودُ إِلَى أُمُورِ دُنْيَوِيَّةٍ. Meaning, we're not talking about the knowledge that goes back to the affairs, the worldly affairs. That's not knowledge we're talking about, or consider. The knowledge we're talking about is the knowledge that is based upon the Sharia. Alright? So in case that there can be, for example, if there's some knowledge that it can be harmful, that particular thing that a person is doing that can be harmful to his or her religion, right? Then that thing will fall under that which is impermissible. And if it's some type of knowledge that doesn't have any benefit connected to it, nor any things that is harmful, then at the very least it can probably be wasting your time. The Sheikh said here, it can be law, or it can be إضاعة للوقت, wasting of time. فكل النصوص التي فيها مدح العلم. He says, so all of the text indicates the virtues of knowledge. وَثَنَاءُ عَلَى أَهْلِهِ إِنَّمَا أَرَادَ بِهِ الْعِلْمُ الشَّرْعِي. And so that you know, Shaykh Uthaymeen, there is mentioned when he was young, so about the age of 6 or 7 years old, he used to visit a judge house, a house of a judge. I just want to ask you a question. How many of our children, literally as the brother was saying earlier, if you just look at our reading levels of our children, how many of them show signs like that? Promising signs of, being bright, wanting to study, wanting to be eager, wanting to learn. All right? A lot of the ulama, they mention when they talk about the likes of Shaykh Islam and Taymiyyah, they talk about these different scholars, they mention that they come from a family of scholars. All right? That's not always the case. Sometimes you have stories like Fudal ibn Iyad, who repented, who was a highway robber, who didn't come from a family of knowledge. But what I'm trying to bring out is that our children sometimes are going to pick up what we show them. They're going to pick up what we show them. And if we don't have a love for Allah's deen, and we don't have a love for the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, and we don't have a love for knowledge, at the highest being the knowledge of Allah, the knowledge of the Prophet ﷺ, knowledge of religion, and then also reading, math, all of that stuff is encouraged in Islam. A lot of the biographies of the scholars, they were good in math. A lot of the scholars were good in math. Okay, we don't think this is just secular knowledge, we just throw it to the side. No, they were good in math. And he also was good in reading basic comprehension. So Shaykh Uthaymeen used to go and review issues. And here he's talking about, look at it, the fadl, that there's not many books out there that you hear a person talking, except that we have Shaykh Uthaymeen explaining that book. Except that you have Shaykh Uthaymeen explaining the book. You hear names that says Shaykh Uthaymeen this, right? So, look at this. Look at the benefit of that. Imagine having one of our children becoming a scholar. Even if it's not a scholar in religion. Imagine them becoming a scholar, a doctor. Doctor in research, a doctor in anything that's productive, right? That's important. It should be some of the goals we should strive for. Not to be a football player, whether permissible or not. These are some of the goals that we should be aspiring to. So if we don't understand the virtue of knowledge, and we don't display the virtue of knowledge inside our household, right? As Allah Jalla wa'ala said about the Prophet house. He said that in his house is the remembrance of Allah Jalla wa'ala, the Qur'an and the Hadith that's being recited in Surah Al-Ahzab. How many of our house contain of Qur'an and Hadith? This lecture today is going to be from that perspective. It's going to show us how the Salaf dealt with their children in light of Qur'an and Sunnah. What did they teach them? What did they begin to start with? That's what this lecture is going to be about. The Shaykh said, also comment on the verse, he said the author he used as way of a proof to show the virtue of knowledge is the statement of Allah Azza wa Jal. Allah raised from amongst you those who believe, and he raised those who have given knowledge in degrees, right? He said, فَجَعَلَ اللَّهُ تَعَالَى إِيمَانُ وَعِلْمُ سَبْبًا لِرَفْعِ الْإِنسَانُ دَرَجَةً. He says, so here in this verse, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala placed, or he made Iman, belief, and he made knowledge a means to raise one's status, to raise a person's status. How does a person's status get raised? With knowledge and Iman. Here, Allah Jalla in this verse have made it a reason to raise someone's status. So the Shaykh said, he asked a question. That status, is it raised in this life? Is it raised in this life and the next? Or is it raised only in the next life? Who can answer?
It's raised in this life and the next.
It's raised in this life and the next? Who agree with him? You agree with him?
This life and the next.
Raised in this life. What's the example that is raised in this life?
Push you closer to Allah.
And bring you closer to Allah. What else? What else? We're talking about a scholar who's commentating, right, on the hadith of the Prophet, on the ayat of Allah Jalla wa'ala. We know this scholar. We never met Shaykh Uthaymeen. Right? You see that? We never met Bukhari. But look what it does. It raised them in degrees because of this knowledge. That each of us know, some of us, we should have Bukhari in our household. It's a staple book. We should have that in our household. But Bukhari is in mostly all over the world, right? You're talking about someone who went blind later on when he was a little bit younger. He went blind for the mercy of Allah. But this individual, Bukhari, the father of Bukhari, is virtuous. Last but not least, the Sheikh, he said, the answer is general. It applies to both the status in this life and the next life. He said, why? He said, ولهذا نجد أن علماء الراسخون في العلم الناصحون لعباد الله نجدهم بين الناس في القمة وإن كانوا من حيث حسب دون ذلك. He said, for this reason, we find that the well-grounded scholars, firm in knowledge, we found that they, and those scholars are those who advise the servants of Allah, we found that between the people, they are in a high status. When it comes to the scholars and the people, the lay people, where do we put the scholars at? At a high status, right? Based off of what? This knowledge. Not based off a person's reputation. Not based off a person's attraction. How does he look physically? How does she look physically, right? That's not what lasts. What lasts is knowledge. So in order to get our children involved and to get ourselves involved, we need to promote knowledge. And the knowledge we need to promote is Kitab wa Sunnah. That's first and foremost. That's before anything else. And sometimes, because we're Westerners, that's not the highlight in our life. Islamic knowledge seems to get pushed on the back burner. It's an after-school program. School is the more primary reason when we look at Islamic knowledge. It becomes an after-school program. An after-school program. That's what Islamic knowledge is. 2 hours, an hour a day. The companions that was around the Prophet ﷺ, who can tell me some of the names of the companions that were young around the Prophet ﷺ? Who can tell me? What were some of the young companions that was around the Prophet ﷺ that he helped raise?
Was it Abu Hurairah?
Abu Hurairah was older.
No, Abu
Hudayfa.
Hudayfa. Which Hudayfa?
Hudayfa ibn Yamin.
You might want to double check that shit. Hudayfa ibn Yaman, he was a little bit older. He especially was older. Remember, he was the one that came.
One that was the keeper of the secrets.
Who else? Ibn Mas'ud, a little bit older. Who else? The younger. Somebody said Ibn Abbas.
Ibn Abbas.
Ahsan, the cousin of the Prophet ﷺ, young. Who else? Zubair. What is Zubair? His son was Zayd ibn Zubair. Zayd was.
Anas
Who
ibn
else?
Malik.
Anas ibn Malik. How long did he spend in time? Ahsan. Somebody said Zayd, Ali, Ibn Abbas, Ahsan. Zayd, Anas ibn Malik, how long did he spend with the Prophet ﷺ?
He spent, hold on.
How long did he spend with him? His mother put him in a service. How long?
10 years.
10 years, right?
Yeah, 10.
What did he say about the Prophet ﷺ Talibiyah? What did he say about the cultivation of the Prophet ﷺ as a figurehead, as a parent, as a father, as a role model? What did he say? Anybody know what he said? He said that the Prophet ﷺ never raised his voice.
He was always like,
He never struck me. He was always kind. Right? He didn't get this from the Prophet ﷺ giving him a bunch of hadith. I said this, I did this. He's talking about the Prophet's actions. This is important. The child takes from what first? Not your speech. They take from your actions. So going back to what we're talking about, knowledge. If this is not seen in the household, this is going to be a problem. Most people, as the brother mentioned in his talk, most people believe that they left that responsibility of rearing and cultivating the children on the school systems. They left it on the teachers. They left it on the institution that's outside of the home. No, it starts in the home. And it starts from those two people, if that child is blessed with a father and a mother that together, most people come from broken homes, right? If they're together, then they must show that. They must promote that type of knowledge. So also, who other children that was around the Prophet ﷺ? I'm getting to a point. All right, let's look at the achievements of those children that was around the Prophet ﷺ. We forgot Abdullah ibn Umar. Abdullah ibn Umar. Zayd ibn Haritha. It was mentioned in the Qur'an. What are some of the achievements of some of these children that was around the Prophet?
Some of them led armies.
Like Zayd ibn Hari, Zayd ibn Zubair. He led that's Usama ibn Zayd. That's Usama ibn Zayd. Alright, he's the son of Zubair. He led the armies. Some of the senior companions was in that army. Like Abu Bakr, as-Siddiq, like Omar. Alright, he led it. Abdullah ibn Abbas, what's some of his achievements? Not only hadith, what? He memorized Quran. The Prophet made dua. Right? The Abdullah ibn Mas'ud called him what? Tarjuman al-Quran. He called him the interpreter of the Quran. So much so that none of the mufassirin, the people who commentate on Quran, from at-Tabari on down, that they do not what? Mention Ibn Abbas. They have to mention Ibn Abbas said this from his students. Mujahid. Ibn Abbas, he said this. Ibn Abbas said that, right? These are some of the achievements. See how good tarbiyah produce good fruits? So we, as fathers, produce good fruits with our children. And you don't have to be in the life of your child physically every step that he takes to produce good fruits. This is a big misconception, especially here in the West. Alright? Look at Ibrahim, alayhi salam. Some people say, well, you ain't being fair. Ibrahim was a prophet. And then his son was a prophet, right? So I'm not being fair, right? Look at Ibrahim. Who was his sons?
Isaac and Ishmael.
Ishmael and Ishaq, right? Which is known as Isaac. But Ishmael, right? We know that Ishmael was the son that what? What are you supposed to do to Ishmael? We don't want to say kill him, but he said he was supposed to sacrifice him, right? For slaughter, right? Allah basically, he saw in a dream. His dream was actually, he's supposed to sacrifice him, right? What did Ishmael say when his father conveyed to him that news?
He said you should sacrifice me to Allah.
No, something similar. He said, if your Lord commanded you so, I should comply. And you will find, inshallah, that I am patient. That I am patient. Utmost obedience. Right? Tarbiyah is an advice. Tarbiyah is an example. Tarbiyah is in what you leave as principles to your children. Tarbiyah can be in bonding. And all that's going to start back again at knowledge. So you understand that? So inshallah ta'ala today, the different speakers will touch on different issues of how we can raise our children in Qur'an and Sunnah. You don't have to beat yourself up. Some things you might already be doing. Some things you might be slacking. Just go back, weigh it, and try to, if you got children. Even like the brother said, if you only see your child, such as me, I don't have custody of a lot of my children. But if you don't see them, when you talk to them, at least part something with them. At least the times when you are with them. At least part something with them. A child is not just about nafaqah. Even though a lot of people make that about that. A child is not just expense. I need the child need new shoes. The child need to do this. Why is I'm getting the child that? What did the child do? What was the reward and the punishment? Where is that set in play? The companions used to do it. What they used to do for their children when they wanted them to fast. When the companions wanted their children to fast, what would they do? Man, Eugene, look at that. They used to give them toys. Why would they give them toys? As a way of encouragement for them to fast. These are some of the things they used to do. We get ready to stop, inshallah ta'ala, for a 10-minute break. And then, inshallah ta'ala, our next speaker, Muhammad Musa, should be speaking, inshallah. Subhanakallah wa bihamdik. Ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk. Jazakallahu khairan.